What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? I attend a prestigious white high school on scholarship because I am nowhere near as rich as everyone else. I'm known around school as the Brown charity case, and I constantly have people coming up to me to tell me things like, "Isn't it funny we are the same age but my dad bought me a condo and you have to decide between keeping the water running or buying groceries." It actually wasn't funny at all, but I couldn't expect rich snobby white boys to understand that. The bullying didn't go past stupid comments like that, unless it was Brad I was talking to. Brad had money, his family had power, and he wanted everyone to know that. His clothes were designer, his car was the latest Maserati, and he could get away with anything by throwing a check at whatever problem he wanted to solve. And the thing with Brad was that he liked to feel superior to everyone else. I think he got off on it. Anytime I saw him open his mouth, it was either to brag about his next expensive trip or to mock anyone who couldn't afford the same. To be fair, in a school full of rich kids he was the richest. So, when he got wind that I could only afford to attend this high school on a scholarship, he nearly creamed his pants. He came up to me and the first thing he said was, "Hey brown boy, how about you come here and polish my shoes for a little bit of change? I know you need it." He then said he had an even better idea and offered to hire me as his personal maid. He said he'd pay me $5,000 a week for it, but I had to wear a maid costume the entire time. I won't lie, I almost accepted because I couldn't afford to be prideful. But because I hesitated, Brad immediately bursted out laughing and said he had no idea I was that desperate. He then went around telling everyone that I wanted to be his personal maid and started to ruin my reputation even more. I instantly went from Brown charity case to maid boy. He even bought me a maid costume and forced me to wear it around school for days. He said I had to or else he would get me expelled, and knowing Brad, he could. Luckily, Brad quickly got bored of it and I stopped caring about what he or anyone else said, because I knew their actions would come to bite them in the future. Instead, I started focusing on my grades, and anything that would make me some money. So, while Brad was busy banging chicks and partying, I got a part-time job working for, who would have thought, Brad's grandfather, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison had made his fortune from scratch, and now controlled most of the restaurants in our county. He didn't inherit anything and I admired him, despite knowing Brad was his descendant. I also found out that by the time I started working for him, he needed round-the-clock care since his health had been declining for years. I had to help him with meals, medication, and general care and taking care of the estate. While working there, I quickly noticed that his family didn't visit much. They only showed up when they wanted money or favors. Brad, especially, couldn't care less about his grandfather's condition or his grandfather at all. But after a couple of months, Brad found out I was working for his grandfather, and he took advantage. He started posting pictures of me helping his grandfather with captions like, "If you are looking for anyone to wipe your grandfather's butt, here he is. That's all maid boy will be good for anyways." Then he would tell me that while I was doing all of this for his grandfather, he was going to be inheriting his wealth by just having his last name. I ignored him since I needed the money, and I really liked working for Mr. Harrison. He wasn't like the rest of his family. Despite his wealth, he was down to earth. Sure, he had the big house, the luxury cars and all the signs of wealth, but he didn't flaunt it the way Brad did. In fact, the more I worked for him, the more I realized his wealth didn't make him happy. One afternoon as I was wrapping up for the day, Mr. Harrison sat me down and told me something that I'll never forget. He said, "You know, my family, they don't talk to me unless they need money. They only see me as a checkbook. It's lonely. I spent my whole life building something, but the people closest to me only care about my money and not me." After that, Mr. Harrison and I became close. He'd ask about school, my upbringing and my mom. But one day he suddenly asked, "What is your biggest dream, kid?" I told him I didn't know because dreams felt so far away. But he kept asking and eventually